Yeah.
We got London on the track.
This is all God's doing, man, you can't plan it. But if the devil's in the details, then I'm satanic.
The greatest game in NBA history. What does it mean and how does it look? Out of all the great buzzer beaters and comebacks in the league's rich biography, the task of labeling one the greatest is daunting at best and nearly impossible at worst. Because when we dig up some of the archive footage over the last 50 years, there are some unbelievably incredible visuals that will stay with the basketball fan for a lifetime. If you grew up in the 1970s, you would have sworn there would never be a better game than Game 5 of the 1976 Finals between John Havlicek's Boston Celtics and the Phoenix Suns. From remarkable shot making to fans rushing on the court before time elapsed, the game included some of the wildest and chaotic sequences in basketball history. In the 1980s, although there is not a clear standout game, the close battles between the Celtics and Lakers, with guest appearance from the Pistons, made for must-see TV in anticipation to all the Hall of Fame players involved. And of course, the 1990s saw MJ be MJ, rewriting the idea of how big plays on the biggest stage can make you the greatest basketball player of all time. The flu game, the shrug game, his last game, any of these moments crack the short list of the most iconic games ever played in the NBA. But what about the generation who grew up after Jordan? What game for us can we point to our grandkids and say, yeah, I witnessed that live? While we all support different teams as NBA fans and may choose the game that best connects with our personal fanhood as our favorite, there is one moment to me that distinguishes itself above the rest. On June 18, 2013, a battle for the NBA 66th championship took place between the Miami Heat and the San Antonio Spurs. With Greg Popovich and company looking to seal the deal, the full events that transpired in this affair may never be replicated again. In this video, I recount the incredible display of theatrics that was Game 6 of the 2013 NBA Finals, and why it might possibly be the greatest NBA game ever played. The 2012-2013 season marked a return to normalcy for the NBA world. A year after having a shortened 66-game season due to the NBA lockout, players and coaches regrouped to prepare for a season that would start on Halloween rather than Christmas. While new faces on new teams brought hype to several franchises across the league that didn't deserve it, it was pretty much business as usual for Tim Duncan and the San Antonio Spurs. Finishing with 50 or more wins for the 14th consecutive season, the Spurs cruised through the regular season to end up second in the Western Conference at 58 wins and 24 losses. Another season marked by a clear success by committee approach, San Antonio once again showed the power of elite coaching in the absence of a true NBA superstar. In the playoffs leading up to the finals, despite some brief trouble against future heavyweights in the Golden State Warriors, the Spurs fought their way back atop the Western Conference playoffs for the 5th time in its franchise history, ready to prove their teamwork could beat anyone in their way. Ironically, the team meeting for a collision course happened to have the exact opposite philosophy. With LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh, the 2012-2013 Miami Heat were legitimately defined by the performances of their superstars on a nightly basis. Good news for them, it happened to be a winning formula. In the 2012 NBA Finals, a 27-year-old LeBron finally attained his first NBA trophy against the Oklahoma City Thunder. As the title had eluded him for his first 8 seasons of his career, it served a huge purpose of getting the monkey off his back, similar to other great iconic players. At the same time, however, one ring was still peanuts in the overall conversation of NBA legends, and a Heat repeat would go a long way to securing James' legacy. Unsurprisingly, Miami's season in 2012-2013 was a nice mix of cruise control and utter domination. Having remarkably improved on his game yet again, LeBron shot a blistering career-high 56.5% from the field, while also winning the NBA's Most Valuable Player award for a 4th time. As a collective group, the Heat made history in having the second longest consecutive winning streak ever at 27 games. Even with an unexpected 7-game series against the Indiana Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals, their seemingly assured spot among the final 2 teams never felt in jeopardy. Speaking of jeopardy, who are the San Antonio Spurs for 500 would be the response to the NBA franchise undefeated in the NBA Finals, as they had gone 4-0 in their previous 4 appearances. In other words, even in light of a historic year, LeBron and the Heat were going to have to bring their A game if they were going to come out victorious. Although very much competitive, the first 5 games of the 2013 NBA Finals were not as exciting as one may think. Apart from a tightly contested Game 1, every other game was decided by double digits. Having won games 1, 3, and 5 on the backs of hot shooting from Tony Parker and Danny Green, the Spurs upped their offensive potency to overmatch the Heat's hawkish team defense. On the other hand, Miami's resilience to bounce back for Game 2 and Game 4 wins made you feel like the Spurs were never that far ahead in the series. But with that said, Greg Popovich knew how to challenge LeBron, and he made it a point for his defenders to dare James to shoot, or that meant going under screens or deliberately backing off him on the perimeter. In turn, you could tell LeBron was thrown off by the Spurs, and he failed to score at least 20 points in the first 3 games. If the Heat failed to win the upcoming Game 6, and thus the series, the ghost of 2011's choke job against the Mavs would come back to rear its ugly head. At the start of Game 6, both the Spurs and the Heat came out firing. With their backs against the wall, it was actually the role players who did the heavy lifting early for Miami. Mario Chalmers, or Super Mario as his teammates called him, produced a crucial 10-point first quarter that kept the Heat on par. For Miami fans who remember Chalmers' heroics in the 2012 NBA Finals, it is clear the spotlight is never too big for the KU national champion. Of course, the Spurs had no fear of the big moments themselves, and the Miami crowd did nothing to slow them down. In what may be the most unsurprising narrative of the entire series, good old Tim Duncan brought it back a couple years to dominate from the start. With the vintage moves on display, Timmy D scored a game-leading 12 points in the first quarter and was the main reason San Antonio was only down by 2 after 1. Now let's be honest, the juiciest parts of an NBA game, or any basketball game for that matter, happen in the fourth quarter. While everybody can remember the certain play or sequence that occurred during the closeout parts of a pivotal game, there is something to be said for the moments of the matchup that get lost in the crowd. Quite regularly, these are actually the moments that can ultimately decide the outcome of the game. And the second quarter between the Heat and Spurs had potential to be a prime example of this very phenomenon. For much of this period, Miami maintained a slim but stable lead on San Antonio. With some ill-advised turnovers and missed shots by the Spurs, the Heat capitalized on their opportunity to expand a small lead and realized a 7-point advantage at the 7:15 mark in the quarter. As Miami fans cheered on another Chalmers basket, there was a sense the Heat could maybe pull away and save the dreaded anticipation a close fourth quarter would bring for Game 7 instead. In reality though, it wasn't going to happen with Popovich on the sidelines, and San Antonio did a better job managing their mistakes to finish out the quarter. In fact, a 44-40 lead for Miami turned into a 50-44 Spurs advantage at halftime. The 10-0 run at the end of the period for San Antonio was the often forgotten, rarely mentioned turning point that made this game what it was. For his part, LeBron did not look anywhere near what he needed to be if he expected the Heat to prevail in the first half, as he only had 9 points on a passive 3 of 9 from the field. For the camp that says James doesn't get enough help, the Miami supporting cast deserves a lot of credit for making up for LeBron's B- performance. The great Coach K always said the most important parts of a basketball game were the last few minutes of the first half and the first few minutes of the second half. At the start of the third quarter, both the Spurs and the Heat managed to play even with each other, and San Antonio's lead remained constant until the 7-minute mark. The good news for Miami was that they were already in the penalty, and this helped them keep the score close despite a lack of field goal makes. After a quick 4 points from Dwayne Wade and Mike Miller, the momentum shifted back to the home crowd, and the San Antonio lead was down to 1. At this point, the Heat defense was in a great rhythm, and their quick rotation started to give San Antonio some trouble. But just when you thought Miami had the Spurs ready to give the ball away, Tony Parker comes to the rescue with a ridiculous and-one basket. Let us break it down real quick. The possession starts in chaos with Gary Neal facing a hard double from Ray Allen and Birdman Chris Anderson. Neal is able to deliver a post entry to Tim Duncan, who carries a size advantage on Shane Battier, but instead of attacking decides to throw a risky pass to Boris Diaw near the baseline. As Diaw collects the pass and attempts to feed a lurking Kawhi Leonard, the Spurs catch another break as Wade briefly intercepts the ball, but loses it, leading to a broken play opportunity for Parker, who of course ends up making the contested finish. Not only was the sequence notable for the actual shot, but it was a huge momentum-killing play that gave the Spurs a little more breathing room. Immediately following the basket, LeBron continues his nightmarish performance with a near wide-open missed layup on the other side, and a fast break opportunity for San Antonio ensues, eventually ending in free throws for Diaw. On the very next possession, LeBron makes another crucial mistake as Kawhi jumps one of his passes and goes coast to coast for an and-one opportunity. All of a sudden, a closely contested game that could go either way was back to 9-point lead for the Spurs. And this all happened during literally 1 minute of running clock. More than anything else, this period set up the fourth quarter we all remember so well. With groans heard throughout the crowd, a sense of doubt started creeping the arena, wondering if there was even to be a Game 7. Although the Spurs managed to build the lead as high as 13 in the third quarter, the lead finished at an even 10 heading into the fourth and final period. Without a field goal made in the quarter, LeBron was looking at an unimaginable 3 of 12 for the game. If James was going to keep the repeat dream alive, he couldn't rely on Wade, Bosh, Chalmers, or even Mike Miller. It was going to be on him, and only him, to pick up his play and deliver a sensational performance we could all talk about years later. As I move to the last quarter, I'm sure you all could guess what happens next. Now, in all of the great performances of LeBron James' career that I personally watched, I've appreciated them all as it relates to the different contexts in which they occurred. Along with this, when I recount his absolute greatest games, I start to notice some subtle contrast in the demeanor and look on how he delivers these incredible showings. Although I am definitely guilty of psychoanalysis here, I think we can characterize 3 different types of LeBrons in these historic games. These are none other than fearless LeBron, clinical LeBron, and desperate LeBron. For example, to me, LeBron's 2007 Game 5 performance against the Detroit Pistons, in which he scored his team's final 25 points, represents a period of fearless LeBron, where his youth and nothing to lose bravado at only 22 gave him an advantage in having almost a sense of naivety or innocence in a moment that could cripple others. Clinical LeBron is a reference to his locked-in performances from start to finish, in particular Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Finals in 2012 or Game 5 of the 2016 NBA Finals. These moments are special not only for the precision and form that James excelled at for an entire 48 minutes, but also for the calm and assassin demeanor he carried. Last but not least, there is desperate LeBron. These are the performances that are delivered, where LeBron gains a unique energy that feels like it actually came out of nowhere, brought upon by the sense of urgency that the moment requires. In the fourth quarter of Game 6 in the 2013 NBA Finals, we witnessed this desperate LeBron firsthand. With the now or never attitude needed to overcome the double-digit deficit, James and the Heat took the first minutes of the period on by storm. A team that looked defeated just minutes before became the team hungrier to keep fighting. Although help was provided by timely threes from Mike Miller and Mario Chalmers, the start of this quarter was all about LeBron. As his legacy hung in the balance of the next few minutes, the kid from Akron, Ohio, became the kid from planet Krypton. In the first 7 minutes of the fourth quarter, LeBron scored 12 points while the Heat went on an iconic 22-9 run to miraculously retake a 3-point lead. With most of his damage coming without his patented headband, a lot of viewers remember this for the first time we saw LeBron play with his receding hairline public to all watching. Who knows if this had anything to do with his game, but it's definitely fun to think it had some effect. Anyways, back to the game. Even with just the 3-point lead in their back pocket, things got comfortable again for Miami fans, as there is nothing more predictable than seeing the Heat maintain the lead from here on out. Because come on, there is just no way Miami could lose the game after all they went through, right? Well, don't tell the San Antonio Spurs that. As a team whose demeanor remains the same, whether they're up by 20 or down by 20, the most poised team in the NBA showed little signs of being rattled. And as the Heat missed a couple amazing opportunities to extend the lead with both teams going scoreless for nearly 2 minutes, a slashing Manu Ginobili finds a wide open lane to cut the lead to 1 with 2 minutes and 31 seconds remaining. Every basket counts at this point, and D Wade helps out with some clutch free throws on the other end after finding contact on the pump fake. Heat back up 3. Now right under the 2-minute mark, a 3-point lead with the ball becomes potent, but they have to grab the rebound first. The Danny Green offensive board here was criminally underrated in this final stretch. Because although Duncan and Parker have been incredibly quiet in the fourth quarter up to now, you know they were always a threat to make a game-changing play in the clutch. Out of the timeout with 1:47 remaining, Parker decides he's going to be the superhero for a minute and hits a spectacular step-back three-pointer to tie the game up. The craziest part of this sequence happens just 30 actual seconds later as a sped up Chalmers turns the ball over to Parker, and as Tony decides he's not done being an absolute savage, he returns to the other end to hit a tough floating shot to give the Spurs a 2-point lead. Oh my god, what the hell just happened? How did things switch so quickly? Just a prime example of why this game was so great. It didn't have any sort of predictability. Players looked bad 1 second and then looked amazing the next play. After Miami comes out of the timeout, LeBron comes back to tie or reclaim the lead as he bullies Tony Parker on his back with a mismatch. On his way to gather the ball, the Spurs D collapses and he loses the ball. Turnover. A fast break opportunity for San Antonio ensues and it leaves Ginobili ahead of the pack to get more free throws. 4-point game. A huge mistake by LeBron there, but he still has time to redeem himself, right? Let's see what happens. Returning down the court, James brings the ball down. No real plan. As Leonard is still giving him plenty of room to shoot, LeBron rejects this idea and goes to the lane. In a very passive manner, he gets to the elbow and offers up a funny looking pass in Chris Bosh's direction. Miscommunication follows, and San Antonio ends up with the ball yet again. Another turnover. 4 points down with 28 seconds remaining and free throws coming. This game was just about over. The abrupt nature in which Miami's season was about to end couldn't have been less believable. LeBron James, who had one of his best fourth quarter performances in his career, also coincidentally made the 2 biggest choke job plays in NBA Finals history. As he walked back to the other side of the court, you could see the look of confusion on his face, almost like he knew he was guilty of committing a basketball meltdown of epic proportions. For all the MJ fans, this was the shining moment. In the clutch with the game on the line, LeBron's indecisiveness or lack of go-to move will always be the ultimate trump card in the debate. And in this moment, with this much on the line, I really can't disagree. As Manu Ginobili shoots free throws to ice the game, Miami fans start to pour out of the arena. In fact, even after you see him miss the first free throw, you can see fans in the back of the shot still walking to the exits. Sorry Miami fans, but that's just an incredible lack of faith for your home team. Nonetheless, a made Ginobili foul shot this time makes it a 5-point game with 28 seconds to go. Miami calls their final timeout and advances the ball to half court. From the Spurs' perspective, one more stop and they're going to be 2012-2013 NBA champions. But even being so close to victory, great coaches keep coaching until the very end. In a highly controversial decision, Greg Popovich decides to take Tim Duncan out of the game in favor of Boris Diaw. Due to Miami's need for the 3, I assume Pop wanted a more flexible lineup to manage potential switches on screens. Looking back in hindsight, this was a huge development for what happens next. On the first play, initial action between Wade and Allen gets San Antonio to bite really hard on making sure Ray doesn't get a good look. Although Dwayne is briefly open for a minute down the lane, the Allen decoy also gives LeBron a free pass at the top of the key. In a simple catch and shoot motion, LeBron shanks his attempt horribly, but there is a scramble for the rebound. With Miami gaining a little bit of fortune, Mike Miller is able to recoup the ball and return it to LeBron, who is ready to fire once again. In one swoop, James hoists up the shot and nails the 3-pointer. What a sequence. Back to a 2-point game. Now it is San Antonio's time to call timeout, and just like the Heat, they have no more remaining. This meant they cannot be picky in who they managed to get the ball into on the ensuing inbounds. And as Miami of course realized this very same point, they did their best to avoid allowing the Spurs' best free throw shooters to get open. Not sitting for long, Tim Duncan is chosen as the inbounder and is given the option of Danny Green, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, and Kawhi Leonard. As the play unfolds, notice there's actually immediately a chance for Duncan to get the ball to Green in the backcourt, but Tim decides against it. As Ginobili tries to come towards the ball, Wade executes a solid face guard to keep him from getting open. And with Parker out of the picture on the baseline, Duncan's only option is to get the ball to Leonard, who was fouled right away. Being a 21-year-old in his second season, there could not have been a bigger moment in Kawhi's short career up to now. Having said this, he was actually already a pretty good free throw shooter at 82% for the regular season. But as the crowd picked up noise and the nerves most likely start to settle in, Leonard misses a crucial free throw to keep the door wide open. Down just 2 points, and guaranteed a shot to tie the game even if Kawhi nailed the second. There is now a sense of the impossible becoming a reality. While Leonard indeed hits the foul shot, the Heat are only down 3 and are given the chance to tie the game with 19 seconds to go. Instead of narrating this part, here is the play that saved the Miami Heat season and LeBron James' legacy.
Should the Spurs foul? Should Miami go for the 3 right away? Just attack the basket. James catches, puts up a 3. Won't go. Rebound Bosh. Back out to Allen. His 3-pointer. Bang! Tie game with 5 seconds remaining.
After this play, I honestly could not believe what I was watching. This was no longer a great NBA game. It was one of the best I had ever seen. To go from 0 to 100, then back to LeBron choking in the 4th, to then staging the greatest finals comeback of all time in the final 30 seconds. There are just too many narratives packed into one game and one event. The image of Ray Allen's 3-pointer, as he makes sure to step behind the line, will forever be the moment that captures the wildness of the final period. Even though I could go on to dramatize what happened in overtime, there is honestly nothing that could overtake this climax. After the Heat were able to contest a game-winning attempt by Tony Parker in regulation, Miami held on to momentum in the extra period and defeated the Spurs, capped off by a Chris Bosh game-winning block. After winning Game 6, LeBron and the Heat went on to capture Game 7, and the rest, as they say, was history. Miami captured the repeat title and had cemented their place among other dominant teams in the modern era. And for those who feel bad for San Antonio, just remember they got sweet revenge the following year, essentially running Miami off the court in a surprisingly quick 5-game series. But getting back on subject, despite the years that have gone by with all the incredible NBA games that have followed, I personally don't believe there has been a game that has matched the intensity and craziness of Game 6 of the 2013 NBA Finals. Even without being a fan of Miami or San Antonio, there was just something different about that game, and in particular, the 4th quarter, that I will never forget. Love to hear your guys' thoughts. Peace.